We have Dr. Sean Weiss here with us today. He's an expert helping businesses, high potential growth businesses, get to that next level, become profitable. He's one of North America's leading mentors, and he has a great passion for business. He's an award-winning author. And many of you guys will know one of Canada's most popular TV shows, Dragon's Den. He was a consultant for them. Yeah. And he also gives back to our communities, and today he's donating his time in support of the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sean Weiss.
Our topic today is on artificial intelligence. And I don't know about you, but every time I watch a film, every time I see a news report, they seem to be talking about AI. So I want to make sure that I'm not the only one having this experience. So a quick show of hands. How many here have heard these terms in the last 3 to 6 months? Just put your hand up. Has artificial intelligence. Okay, machine learning. ChatGPT. Chatbots. Now, put your hand up if you can tell the entire room 100% what any of these words mean and why they're different from each other. But it took me a lot of time to figure that out, and I'm hoping that after our chat today, you will have a better understanding. It seems that everywhere we turn, the headlines scream artificial intelligence. New chatbot will change the workforce. Google under threat by AI. Right? You can see it on magazine covers, Wired, the technology magazine. But not just technology and science magazines. Cosmopolitan, a fashion magazine, has a leading story on AI. It seems AI is everywhere. By far, my favorite headlines from the last 12 months go like this. Will a robot steal your job? Are robots taking over the world? And from such leading journalistic integrity as the Daily Mail in Britain, could AI wipe out humanity? But it's not all just the fringe who are worried. This is Time's cover, the end of humanity from Time magazine. So, if you don't have time to stay for the full presentation, let me give you a spoiler. No, AI will not take over yet. Give us 5, 7, 10 years, it won't be the same answer. So, is artificial intelligence everywhere, or are we just cognitively dissonant? We're just hearing it because we're looking for it. This chart shows the increase in Google searches between February 2022 and February 2023. 100x number of searches on generative AI. So people are looking for this information. And it's really only started. AI's watershed moment came in October 2022, and it is set to grow at a speed unseen before. In just its second year, it will cross $500 billion in global revenue. And by 2032, we'll be up to $2.5 trillion. What is this big deal? Well, you can look at growth rates. The cumulative annual growth rate that I've seen is 22.26%, meaning it grows about 1/5 every year. But I've seen also numbers in the 40s and the 60s. We've seen numbers that say 43% of all businesses are considering what to do about AI. One stat came out and said 77%. So let me ask this room. In the last 12 months, from a business perspective, how many of you have had serious and long conversations about AI in your business? That's great. And for everyone else, it's only a matter of time. In 1985, how many people had email? How many people in the room have email today? You wouldn't think of running a business without email. This will soon be the story of AI. One of the biggest concerns that people have with any technology and disruption of our economy is jobs. But we didn't get upset when email replaced the postal service worker. We didn't get upset when we automated the factories. But now we're going to get upset because these jobs are white-collar jobs. Doctors and lawyers and architects and engineers and content providers and videographers and filmographers. These are not, I turn a switch 100 times a day in a factory. These are, I write a defense for a suit you're being sold a suit against. AI, like all disruptions, will lead to an economic impact on the labor force. Some industries will grow. You'll have data wranglers and prompt engineers in healthcare and law. But some industries will see a replacement in their labor force. Some stats say that by 2030, 1/5 of all work hours in the United States can be done by AI. So if you can outsource 1/5 of your work, how fast before the company fires 1/5 of the workforce? So that's our background for today. We've talked a little bit about the explosion of AI. We're going to talk a little bit about the history. We're going to give you some definitions, talk about some business cases that you can go tomorrow and start thinking about. We're also going to give you the pros, the cons, the things to avoid. And in the end, if we have some time, I'll be happy to take questions. My goal today is to help you find answers to these 5 questions. What is it? Do I need to worry about it? What should I look at? Which part of my organization should be focused on it? And what should I do to safeguard not just the use of the technology, but the jobs that we have worked so hard to build? Now, in a world of false news and Donald Trump, I think it's very important that you ask not just what's being spoken, but by whom. So, not as a narcissist, but to give you some context, I want to share a little bit about me and how I came to this knowledge. Despite the marketing efforts, I am not an AI expert. I am an expert at disruption technologies, where startups overlap with innovation and business. That's where my career has been spent. For the last 24 years, I have been not only teaching, but I have also been building. And these 5 startups are the companies that I have founded. In New York in 1999, we created Liquid Excess to deal with excess inventory. 5 or 6 years later, we created a private equity fund using crowd-powered capital. I spent 5 seasons with Dragon's Den. I was happy to see people still watch it. 10 years ago, I was blessed to get involved with a company called Canveda, which we sold 4 years later for $30 million. Last March, my wife went on vacation to Africa, and I used my spare time to create a new company. We created ProfBot, an AI to help my students study for their exams. In addition to building companies, I'm a very active investor. Our campus fund is called Ryerson Futures. We're going to have to change the name now that Ryerson changed the name. But Timu Futures doesn't sound as good. I've made 26 investments in that 7-year period. Everything from artificial intelligence for customer call centers to an NFT about a cute dog. So I have a broad understanding of where technology meets commerce. And with that, I'd like us to get started. And let's start with a little bit of history. In particular, the history of the idea of AI. 1818, more than 200 years ago, Mary Shelley published Frankenstein. It is often cited as the first book for artificial intelligence. It's often cited as the first book of science fiction. But in the 200 years since then, we continue to be fixated on robots and AI. In the 50s and 60s, we had Robbie the Robot. That was followed in the 70s and 80s with HAL 9000, Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator. Of course, any Star Trek fan knows in the 80s we got Commander Data, then The Matrix brought us Agent Smith, the cute Wall-E is Disney, and the very scary Morgan is the latest horror movie on what can go wrong with good technology. All of this has left us with this idea that scientists are working out there to do things that are positive, and they will never end up positive. They will always turn on us and become the villain. But that's necessary for Hollywood to have a story. It doesn't make it true. The true history of artificial intelligence dates back to the early 1950s, when Alan Turing created the Turing test, which is used to determine if an AI is conscious or not. That then moved forward, at least in theory, until the mid-1990s, where we started to look at robots being self-directed. Sony launched its first robot dog in the end of 1999. But after that, we started to see things that we're more common with. How many people have used Siri on your iPhone? How many people have used Alexa on a HomePod or Google? These are all forms of artificial intelligence that have weaved their way into our lives. But for those who didn't raise their hands, how many people used Google? Google now uses AI in its search results. How many people listen to Shopify? Shopify recommends the next song based on artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the software that runs the hardware. We're talking about software that doesn't do X if Y. We're talking about software that learns, grows, and can apply itself to new situations. And artificial intelligence is all over our world, in smart assistants, in search algorithms, in smart cars, in text editing. We used to think spell check was a huge success. Wait till you see AI rewrite the spelling with better grammar than you could do yourself. This industry is not foreign to this topic. Just look around the room. There are all sorts of examples of AI influencing the cleaning and sustainability industry. So, if that's the case, why now? In October of 2022, we had a watershed moment after which the world will never be the same. A company in Silicon Valley called OpenAI created ChatGPT, an application that allows you to talk to the computer and get answers far beyond your knowledge. So what's the big deal? I mean, is ChatGPT just a new cryptocurrency, a new .com that we're going to get excited about today and then gone tomorrow? I don't think so. And here's why I don't think so. This slide illustrates how long it took a company to get 1 million customers. It took Netflix 3.5 years to get 1 million customers. It took Facebook 10 months to get 1 million customers. It took ChatGPT 5 days. 5 days after being open to the general public, the 1,000,000th customer signed up. 5 days. If that's not enough for you, here's another chart that I like to show. This chart shows how long it took technology to get to 100 million users. It took Bell and the telephone 75 years to get to 100 million users worldwide. How long did it take ChatGPT? 2 months. 60 days. They had 100 million users. So perhaps this isn't a fad. The big differentiator between this and, say, NFTs or cryptocurrency is people can't find a legal business use for those technologies. There is no reason to collect images of cats dressing up as gorillas. But ChatGPT is filled with use cases, and use cases that are available without any technical knowledge. You can just type in what you want, and it'll do the work. If you want to compare this, you can see just how big the trajectory is. The red line is ChatGPT. The purple line is Netflix. The first dot is 1 million customers. The second dot is 100 million customers. You're talking about a technology that is doubling every few days. So what are people using this magic ChatGPT for? In a survey of North American executives, these were the top uses in business. Writing code. How many of us have developers? How many of us could develop ourselves? Few or less. ChatGPT will now write code simply based on English instructions. create me an app that does X, Y, and Z, and it will spit out the code. You have code, you don't know how to use it, you can load it into ChatGPT and tell it, tell me this code in plain English. What does this do? And it will walk you line by line without any more insight into what your code does. You can go even crazier. Find the error in these 5,000 lines of code. All of that takes less than 30 seconds. So not only can it do what humans can do, it can do it 1,000 times faster. So what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a large language model, which is a scientific word for the technology behind chatbots. It looks at how language is used, which words are related to which words. It predicts which word should come next in the sentence. It was trained by eating all of the internet. It was trained by eating all of the Kindle publications sold in Amazon. So they took all the books and fed it to ChatGPT. What happens when you feed it? It can do all kinds of crazy things. Here's someone asking ChatGPT to help them with a video idea for a conference. They want ideas for a phishing video, a type of hacking. And within 5 seconds, it's written 5 videos. And if you take this to another AI, it can then turn those words into videos for the same 30 seconds. The key terms that many people get mistaken are not so hard. LLM is a large language model. This is just the technology, the database behind chatbots. Machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence in which you give a machine examples, and it can then replicate those examples or choose what type of example it is. So you can feed an AI bot 10,000 X-rays. Those X-rays, which will be flagged by a doctor, show broken bones in half of them and no broken bones in half of them. Once the computer has eaten all of that information, you can then show it a new X-ray. And no, it won't tell you if the bone is broken. It will tell you that this image is 97% similar to all broken bone images and only 3% similar to non-broken bone images, which is pretty much what the doctors are doing too, right? They're using that data to make a prediction. And finally, you'll hear the term generative AI. That's just a type of the technology where it can reproduce what it's eaten. So if it's eaten every photo on the internet, it can make photos based on what it's learned. The truth is, these are all fancy terms for the same thing. Artificial intelligence is the type of study, the type of science. Artificial intelligence has several subtopics. Machine learning is one of them. Deep learning is a type of machine learning. Generative AI is a type of deep learning. And ChatGPT is just the Netflix of streaming. ChatGPT is of chatbots. It's just an instance. So how do they work? They work a lot like this. You take your pile of data, in this image, a lease by a commercial leaseor. So they have 10,000 leases. And they stuff it into a black box of artificial intelligence that uses neural networks, the same way our brain does, to learn what's a good lease, what's a bad lease, to use data, which leases forfeited, how can we predict those in the future. And in the future, you can feed new leases into it, and it can give you a prediction of how likely they are to default. This can be used for X-rays. It's being used for breast cancer screening. It can be used to generate new things. ChatGPT is simply the application, the brand name, the Kleenex to the tissues. In ChatGPT, and in fact in almost all generative AI, you have to give it instructions. The skill of giving instructions to a computer even has its own name. It's called prompt engineering, because the prompt is what you tell the computer to do, and it spits it out. I'll give you an example. If I asked ChatGPT 3, just an earlier version, of what was the first law of robotics. As you may or may not know, Isaac Asimov wrote a book in which he gave the 3 laws of robotics, but I can never remember it. So I can ask ChatGPT. And because ChatGPT has read that book, Even though it has no idea of what the book is about, how the book makes it feel, it can answer questions about it. I can put in a contract and ask it to help me identify which clauses are most problematic. Whatever you train it with, it can do. And so prompt engineering is really what you put it in and then what you get out. I'll show you an example. A teacher took all the speeches of Elon Musk, all his video appearances, all of the public works he's published, and they trained a chatbot to be a digital Elon Musk. And they let their students ask Elon Musk, the bot, questions. And it answers them in the same tone, the same inflection, the same approach to what Elon's prior work does. Now, this may not be exciting if you're not an Elon Musk fan, but they have one for Shakespeare, they have one for Churchill, they have one for John F. Kennedy. And these chatbots, they don't think they are that person, but they have been trained on that person's speaking type and answers and knowledge. So from a student perspective, it's pretty much like you're talking to them. So being invited to this conference, I wanted to see what ChatGPT could do for all of us. So I fed it this prompt. Imagine you are giving the keynote to a very attractive audience at a conference of industrial cleaning and sustainability. You have been asked to list 5 ways this technology could be used in their business. That's a pretty good question to ask. I certainly can't give you the answer. This was the answer it gave. It first suggested smart formulation of cleaning products. If you feed it all of your ingredients and recipes that you use to make cleaners, it can then create its own and tell you why it's created, why it would be cheaper, better, or stronger. Predictive maintenance. You could feed in all of the maintenance logs for your equipment that you might lease out, and the bot can then predict which factory equipment, which piece of equipment will break next. And it does so between 87 and about 93% accuracy. So you could feed it waste management. You could feed it personalized training modules. Anyone here use video for training? If you did, you could ask the bot to make the video in 8 or 9 other languages. Maybe some of your staff aren't English as a first language. The bot, in less than a minute, can take a video, take all the language, and change it to 72 different languages, from Mandarin to Hebrew to everything. In a minute. How much would it cost you to redo that video in all of those languages? And how much would it cost you if your staff don't understand the words in the training video? I put the 5-second countdown up there because that's how long it took to generate this answer. The moment I hit return, it took 5 seconds to come up with these ideas. It's not just text. I asked the computer to create an image of a kangaroo made of cheese. And I did that because, of course, there's no image of a kangaroo made of cheese. It makes no sense. But it shot out 9 different images. This weren't images from the internet. It made these images in real time, which means there's no copyright on them. You can use them for all of your marketing. Here's a more interesting example. This is a dynamic prompt. So they've written the prompt, and what they're doing is just shifting words in it. And what's happening is the robot, the AI, is outputting images that meet that prompt. Now, you may be thinking, this is no big deal. These images are being pulled from the internet. But they're not. They're being created in real time by the software. And as a result, the ownership becomes yours. It gets even crazier when you look at stuff that Adobe is doing. Adobe has created a tool called Generative Fill, where you can show the computer where in the picture you want to change. This picture had a yellow line added, and then they added what was outside of the frame. It didn't exist. The computer painted it. This picture grabs this elk and moves it to an alleyway, but it's missing something. So they tell the computer, add a red arrow, and it's added. No graphic designer involved. No time wasted. This person is adding in a lake to reflect the photo. There is no lake. It's being added by the computer in real time, but yet it's adjusting the shadows, the light, to make it even better. Now the photographer is adding the northern lights, which weren't there in the original picture. No longer is photography modification a graphic designer's issue. It's now doable. But it's not just images. There's all kinds of other applications. Here is text to video. I asked the computer to draw me a teddy bear painting a self-portrait. And 5 seconds later, that's what it came out. It's a little awkward, but it's and a little scary, but it's still what I asked for. Imagine I had to shoot this in the real world. I'd have to get a teddy bear, I'd have to get an easel, I'd have to pose it, 5 seconds or less. There are lots of other innovations. InVideo has created AI to film. Give me a 1-minute commercial of a monk with superpowers, and it does the voiceover, the background music, the scripting, the monk. It pulls from photography logs. It pulls from generally available clips. It pulls from the public domain, and it decides what to put where. It's incredible. What would take 40 hours and about $10,000 to shoot takes 40 seconds or less. So any kind of disruption has the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think you can already guess some of the benefits. It's cheaper, it's faster, it allows you to do more quicker, it allows you to personalize for everyone. Imagine you're doing a sales mail out, and the computer can personalize it not just with the person's name, but with their history of orders, with what they say on their Facebook, with how their wife is, all automatically and at scale, where you would have to do that one at a time. It can also make improved decision making, it can do quality control, and best of all, it doesn't take coffee breaks. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no Starbucks visits. Doesn't stop for a smoke either. Now, they want you to believe that this is a competitive advantage, that using AI will give you a competitive advantage. But they said the exact same thing about online storefronts. It'll give you a competitive advantage. Once, 10, 20 years ago, having an online store was a competitive advantage. But so was electricity and indoor plumbing, until one day it was a competitive advantage not to have these technologies deployed. And I am telling you now, at this conference in 10 years, this will be the case. Those not using it will be few and far between. Now, it doesn't have to be used at the C-suite. There's a salesperson here on the front lines who writes every email and then has ChatGPT clean it up, make it better, make it more interesting, add punctuation. And as a result, it can make you look better without anyone's permission. You don't need permission to use these things. Unfortunately, AI also has problems. One of the problems is privacy. If you use a public AI like ChatGPT, then your data becomes known to ChatGPT, and it's allowed to use it for whatever it wants, which might be your competitor asking a question. So you have to be careful where you bring your data. You can also employ it on a server side inside your business so that it's only using your data and not others. There are issues of whether the outputs of AI can be patentable. People have tried to get copyrights and royalty agreements on images created by AI, and the courts in the United States have said no. You cannot do it because AI is not a person, and only a person can hold this. The bigger problems are in the middle group here: bias, toxicity, and misinformation. ChatGPT is based on the data it was fed, and that data came from Twitter and the internet and Facebook. How many of us think our best selves are the ones we show when no one's looking on the internet? The internet is filled with misogyny and racism and biases, and so unfortunately, so is the artificial intelligence. It has the exact same lopsided white men perspective. It also spits out information that's not even close to being true. In the business, they call these AI hallucinations, when the bot spits out an answer that is so impossible it can't be true. I'll give you some examples. But the difficulty is that the bot wants to answer your question even if it doesn't know the answer. And so it makes up an answer if it doesn't have one. If you ask a bot to find you a journal that says eating cake every day is healthy, it will spit out a journal. It won't be a real journal. It'll sound like a real journal. It'll have doctors' names on it. They won't be alive or real, but the bot will spit it out because that's what a citation looks like. You have to remember, it's not actually thinking. It's not conscious. It doesn't have emotionals. It's a magic trick. It just looks that way because it's going so fast and talking in plain English. But because it's not thinking and it's not emotionally connected, it doesn't care what it says to you. So there's some very bad cases where people tried to replace crisis hotlines with bots. And those bots started to say, well, maybe your idea isn't so bad. Maybe if your life is that bad, that is a good option. And you can't do that. But the computer doesn't know any better because it's a magic trick. Remember what Asimov said. Any technology that is sophisticated and so far away from what everyone understands will appear as magic. And that's what this appears to be. But it's not really thinking. Here are some of my favorite hallucinations. When was the Golden Gate Bridge transported across Egypt? So, I assume no one here is an expert on history of bridges, but I assume we all know the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco has nothing to do with Egypt. But the robot answers the question. 1903. Why? And it goes on. What is the fastest time it took someone to cross the English Channel on foot? Well, you're all laughing because you've got to swim. You can't walk. But the bot tries to give you an answer. And that answer is so well written that it can really make you think it's accurate. But it's not. So you have to know what you're looking for and not get caught up. You have to fact check your own work or you run into some big, big problems. Any sort of disruption in technology causes problems. There are lots of possible problems that your business can deal with. How will it affect my staff? How will it affect my customers' perception? How will it affect my profit? Right? How can I make sure these hallucinations don't make my business filled with errors? But these are the same issues that every technology has. And then there are still people who are worried about this. They're worried about when the robots take over. Well, I'm happy to share with you that there are things you can do in your implementation and your usage of AI that can make it much safer. The first is a concept called guardrails. Guardrails means you tell the AI what it's not allowed to do. Produce a literature review on cancer in the throat, but only use peer-reviewed journal articles with a 5-star rating. By limiting what the computer is to use to formulate the answer, you get a much better answer. If you don't say that, it will make up journals. It will make up quotes. It'll make up people who give the quotes. But guardrailing or guardrails is the technique where you limit the powers of the bot. In our ProfBot example, the chatbot I created to help my students study for exams, the bot is limited to ask questions that are professor approved. The bot is limited to use benchmark answers provided by the professor. So what is it doing? It's asking the students questions, then understanding the student's answer, comparing that answer to the benchmark, and 5 seconds later giving the student a pat on the head and explaining how to do better next time in real time. I gave this to my students for 9 days before their final exam. After the 9 days, 1,148 sessions were conducted by less than 300 students. Why? Because they're doing it on the subway on their phone. Why? They're doing it when they're bored in accounting class. Sorry for the accountants. They're doing it on their own time. But guard railing allows you to protect your quality by protecting the input. There's also the issue of data. I strongly recommend, if you have corporate, commercial, or data that you want the bots to use and help you understand, you do not use them on public systems. That will train the bot to know that your company has these numbers. You don't want to do that. Finally, you may be thinking, well, we love regulations in Canada. We must have lots of protections. We have none. There are no laws limiting this yet. The best thing that's happened, the most advanced thing, is the federal government put out on Tuesday guidelines for federal employees using AI. But they haven't got the law. And what's interesting is the people making the billions of dollars, the Microsofts, the Googles, the OpenAIs, they want regulations. Why? Because they know how dangerous this could get if it's not kept in check. I am going to be wrapping up, but I wanted to leave you with some things to talk about and some things to try tomorrow when you go back to your office or your organization. This is the list of the 23 tools I feel you're going to need to look at in making your decisions. Anyone who wants this, I will give you an email address. You can send me a note and I'll send you the list. But these apps are the best in class, the most reliable to create video, to create music, to manage your website, to help you with your email writing. And you can access all of them. Usually it's a freemium model. You can use it for 20 minutes a day free, and then you pay. I pay for ChatGPT because I use it every day. I pay $20 a month for unlimited use. It's a pretty small price to pay for having no spelling or punctuation errors in any of my work. So what could you do with it? Well, I found this amazing infographic that gives us 15 things to do or consider doing. How might you use chatbots to make your customer service better? How might you switch your call center from overseas to local? How might you switch your call centers to digital? How might you switch your call centers to chatbots? Revenue. Feeding in revenue, sales, prior data will allow the machine to tell your salespeople the most likely people to buy and the most likely product to sell them in real time as they're walking into the meeting. It's pretty powerful. You can use AI to manage sentiment analysis. What are people saying about your company online? What are people saying about your company on Twitter? You can use it for marketing, creating images, creating videos, making personalized videos. You can use it to reformulate products. You can use it to find issues in your own systems. But again, there are so many uses beyond just creating images and texts and videos. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me. I do appreciate it. I will leave my email address at the end. Anyone who wants a copy of these slides, I'll be happy to share it. Anyone who doesn't get their question answered in the next few minutes, I'm happy to do so. But with that, you have my appreciation, and I'd like to open the floor for questions. You can clap. All right, who's got the first question? The handsome person right there. That's you, sir.
What can we do with regard to the issue of sustainability? How much does it know about sustainability? It's such a complex matter.
So it knows only what we know. And it only knows what we know and have published. So it has read every sustainability publication from PwC and EY and any other organization, even your organizations. If that information is available on the net, it's been read and scanned. Does it know? No. It knows nothing because knowledge is a higher level. It can answer tons of questions that looks like knowledge, but it only knows what we know. What's more interesting is when you ask questions like, based on all of the sustainable literature, what are the big market segments that remain unmet? And it can actually say, well, I read 7,000 articles about this, but there was only 2 articles about that. And so by asking it to find the weakness that you may already know, it can give you an insight because it's based on a much bigger data set than any human could possibly manage. My friend over here in the black with glasses on. Yeah.
The ability to filter garbage data. This is what I'm running into, and this is what I'm hearing a lot about in my profession. The application of AI, but is it filtering good data versus garbage data?
So it's only using the data you tell it to use. So it can't tell good data from bad data. However, you can train AI by taking 100 points of data and identifying which you determine to be bad data, for whatever reason you think it's bad data. And then the machine can copy which new data category should this be filed in. Is it more similar to the bad data or more similar to the good data? So you can train it, but if you feed it bad data, bad garbage, uncleaned material, it will spit out the results based on all of that. So, as I'm sure you know in your industry, garbage in, garbage out, you need to have clean data to start with. But you can use AI to clean the data. So if you have 100,000 client records, it pays to take 1,000 of them and go through what's wrong with them and then teach the model. Then the model will do the other 99,000. But the model isn't judging. The model is simply saying, based on my knowledge, this is more close to bad data than it is to good data. And so the more you give it clear examples, the better it can find. Thank you. That's a great question. Another question here? Yes, sir, in the front row.
Here recently I've heard about, like, on the news, you're getting this AI fake reporters and not real people. I'm worried about that. And the other thing was, just like yesterday I heard on the radio about some music awards. There was one of the singers with AI. I'm wondering, like, is that, like, or soon, is it all going to be all fake?
So the questions, and I'll do them in reverse, was I hear about AI and music. There are lots of lawsuits, including everyone's favorite Torontonian, Drake, suing people because they used his collection of songs to train a computer to write songs that sound like him, but aren't him. And so if I'm a lawyer by training, and if you know intellectual property law, he should get some of that royalty because it's his material being used to inform the output. But they're not paying him. In fact, he never gave permission for his material to be used that way. Sarah Silverman is suing OpenAI because her book was read by the machine and she never gave it permission to. And so if you buy a book, you have rights to read that book, to share it with people, but you don't have rights to put it up in the public. And she's saying they've done that. And so there are a lot of strange lands that we're going to experience. On the issue of fake news and fake reporters, you are 100% correct. I can create an AI avatar that looks almost perfectly human. I can have it speak in perfect inflection, perfect language, and I can feed it a script of absolute garbage, nonsense, dangerous stuff. Okay? And it will make a video that looks like CNN is talking. Now, I'm not commenting on whether CNN is garbage or not, but this definitely is. But it's worse than you could imagine. We rely on video as if it's evidence. I got a video of someone yelling at a bus driver. That person's going to go to jail, being charged with 5 things because they were filmed. But what if they weren't filmed? What if it was an AI video? You will soon not be able to use evidence of video, of photos, of writing without analysis. Now, smarter people than me and AIs can usually detect those things. There are things that we don't see with the human eye that the AI picks up on. But it isn't close. My students can write AI essays, and no matter what plagiarism tool I use, I can't catch it. But I can still ask them in person, face to face, what their essay said, and fail them when they don't know. Another question. Yes, my friend over here in the blue.
Kind of leading on with the idea of copyright and plagiarism. So if we're going to use AI to write a blog, and a lot of what you do in healthcare, you're using peer-reviewed articles. How do you get the citations? Because you really don't want to be, responding back to an exercises or an IT doc and not have the process to back out the citations.
Absolutely. So the question is around when you publish in higher levels of journals, like academic journals, medical journals, you're expected to have all your citations and sources. It's a guardrail issue. You restrict the AI to only use a certain caliber or certain specific nature, the Journal of Nature, and it only uses that. Then you specifically instruct it to put the citation it's drawing from. Then you check the citations to make sure it didn't make one up. And it almost always does. Almost always does. And so a quick check of citations will usually figure out who's lying to us and saying it's their work. However, if you use those citations and they're real, and if the quotes you're using are real, there is nothing plagiarized about that. It is a new piece of content. However, the real question, and again, this wasn't yours, the real question is, who is the author of the document? Is it you who submitted the document? Is it you and the artificial intelligence? There's no answer. No one knows the answer right now. What I do is I include on the bottom of any article that I've used AI for a statement. This article was curated by Dr. Sean Wise with the help of ChatGPT. I also used spell check and a laptop. I think you see my point, right? We think it's such a big deal, but when was the last time you didn't use spell check? So it's going to be at that level. I think we got time for one or two more before you guys and gals want some food. The young lady wearing a red shirt and a black jacket.
I was wondering if it can actually help with sort of defining a people prospect list. So does it have access to LinkedIn and also contracts?
So everyone has a variation of the AI. So ChatGPT is a very general one. There are sales AI that eat Salesforce data and eat LinkedIn data and look at your customer list on, say, Salesforce and find you people who aren't customers but look like your customers. I mean, that's a miracle to me, right? If I can sell a product to people I didn't even know existed because it found them, it can do that 100%. We used to do that with first-year students. Go out and do your research, find me a list, and curate it. But this thing spits it out in like a minute. And it's not making those up. It's ripping them right out of LinkedIn. Now, it might be violating LinkedIn's terms of use because they were written 20 years ago. We don't know. It is literally the Wild West. But quick show of hands, how many people don't have a website? And the rest of us? This is what it's going to be in 10 years. How many people are using AI and how many people aren't? Just like we use spell check. I'm getting the signal to wrap up, but I think I have time for one more question. Is there one more question in the room? Yes, sir.
My question is less about the application. It's a more technical question regarding the English channel thing, which is hilarious, by the way. How is it that the AI could not figure out that people or human beings can't walk on water unless you're a messiah of sorts? But the question is relevant because, like, let's say somebody was researching to use a certain chemical on a certain product, and it spits out the wrong information, and they use it, and then there's a problem. So how do we reconcile that?
So the question is around AI hallucinations and what causes them. This would have been a very different answer 2 days ago. So 2 days ago, I would have said to you that the leading scholars can't tell you what's causing it. People around the world are seeing these things, and they just look crazy. They come out of left field. You ask it the same question a different way, and it gets it 100%. 2 days ago, a study in a peer-reviewed journal, one of the Nature Science journals, came out with an explanation as to the origin of hallucinations. It's still very early, but they believe what's happening is a fault in the model itself. The model has never seen a person not walk on water, and so it doesn't inherently know it can't do that. Or it may have seen that there are stories about one person who walked on water, and maybe it overgeneralizes that ability. It will be years before we fully have analyzed what's going on inside the AI's head. And only then will we be able to apply general fixes to fix these issues. But for now, the biggest fix, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, don't take anything for granted. And I don't take you for granted. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I wish you the very best.